Uh, wow. We're talking about explosive blessings this month. And I know that some people still have a little challenge with explosive. But think about it, explosive blessings. Thank you, Paul. Not Dave, I'm sorry, not Paul. See, you just made me just forget about all about it. But at any rate, just think about the word explosive. It means bursting forth, bursting through any restrictions or limitations. So don't be afraid of blessings being explosive. There's nothing negative about that. So just think about, you want your blessings to just explode all over the place as we dwell in this land of plenty this year. And so just open up and just allow them. If you don't like the word explosive, however they come out, just let them come out. We just want to be blessed, right? And so what we're doing, we're talking this month about visioning, and visioning being one of our 7 sacred practices here. And we're going to be anchoring into our 7 practices, our sacred practices here throughout the year. But this month we're going to focus on visioning because that is one of the most profound practices that we have. And I've been thinking about the importance of anchoring into all of our practices and all of our, not only the practices that we have here, but other spiritual practices as well. And as I was coming here this morning, I got in my car and I, immediately grabbed the seatbelt as most of us do. And, then you adjust your mirrors and make sure the seat's right. And then you do whatever else you do to make sure that you are getting onto the road safely. And I thought about it as I was driving here and just paying attention to how I was driving, staying in my lane, watching other cars pass, stopping at the lights, doing all the things that we do when we drive along on a trip whenever we're going anywhere. And I thought about how mindful and how committed we are to doing those things when we're starting on a trip, doing those things that keep us safe, doing those things that keep us moving forward, doing those things that get us to where we want to go. And I compared that to our spiritual practice and how we wouldn't get in a car and think about driving out, most of us, without fastening our seatbelts. But we will leave home without praying. Some of us. We'll leave home without meditating. We'll leave home without affirmations. We'll leave home without any thought of God, without any thought of divine intelligence, without any thought of the source of our being, without any thought of gratitude. And sometimes that doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. Sometimes it happens because we're rushing. Sometimes it happens because we got a lot on our mind. Sometimes it happens because we just didn't think about it. Or sometimes it happens because we're not in the practice of doing anything that recognizes the source of our being before we leave home, before we go out into this trip called life, or trip called daily life. And I want us to think about that. Think about how mindful we are when we're driving. Think about how mindful we are as we're going on a trip, as I said, to the store, to work, to church, to wherever we're going. We're really mindful about how we're doing those things for safety, how we're doing those things for self-care, how we're doing those things that really get us to where we want to go. That's the same mindfulness we have to have with our spiritual practice. That's the same mindfulness we have to have on this trip called life. That's the same mindfulness we have to have for the safety and the security of ourselves and others, and for our own well-being, and to get us where we want to go. And so that's why I'm inviting you this month to anchor in to our 7 sacred practices. Fasten those spiritual seatbelts. Those are the ones that keep us safe. Those are the ones that keep us anchored. Those are the ones that keep us in alignment with God. Those are the ones that keep us in alignment with the source of our being. Those are the ones that keep us not only in our own lane, which is where we really need to learn to stay most of the time, in our own lane. And I mean that on so many levels, I think you Sometimes we find ourselves way over in somebody else's lane, and we have to just get back in our own lane. But the important thing for us to remember is to be in God's lane always. Always being in God's lane. You know, as I was driving here, I was also aware that, you know, even when we're driving and we have our seatbelts on, our lights are turned on, and the mirrors are working, and everything's working fine, and we're staying within the yellow lines, that doesn't mean there aren't going to be bumps in the road. That doesn't mean that you may not hit a pothole. That doesn't mean that something scary might not happen while you're driving, or that somebody else may be doing something that's sort of untoward when they're driving. That doesn't mean that things won't come up. It just means that we've secured ourselves with our seatbelts, with our safety precautions that we take. And the same way with going through life. That doesn't mean that things won't come up. That doesn't mean that we won't go through storms. That doesn't mean that we won't go through times that don't feel so good. That doesn't mean we won't have times that are challenging. That doesn't mean that we won't have times that feel limiting. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that we're anchoring ourselves in the presence of the all that is. It means that we are ensuring that we are in the right lane so that we get to where we want to go, whether we are going fast or slow or going over bumps or potholes or whatever the case may be, rough terrain, whatever the case may be, so long as we are in God's lane, we get to where we want to go. So long as we're in God's lane, we keep those seatbelts on, we keep our focus, we stay mindful, and we keep moving forward. That's what spiritual practice does for us. That's what the 7 sacred practices do for us. And the more we anchor ourselves into them, as I said last week, I love the concept of becoming self-empty and God-filled. The more we anchor into our practices, we become more and more self-empty, small self, and God-filled. That's our goal, to be God-filled, and to allow God to guide us, to allow God to direct us, allow our lives to unfold in the way that God wants its life as us to unfold. And that's what we're talking about this month and talking about visioning. I talked last week about visioning for our own lives. God has a vision for our lives. God already knows how it wants to show up as us. And all we have to do is make ourselves available, move ourselves into alignment with it, make ourselves available and open to it. And it's like, have thine own way. Have thine own way. However you want to show up as me, I'm available. I'm surrendered. I'm open. Have thine own way. Let's take a breath. The things that we get frightened about sometimes is that thy way may not be my way. You know how that one goes? It may be something that I want that maybe God doesn't want. We think that anyway. Thy will or my will. I used to think they were separate. And I was always going to do things my way and my will. And God's will, it was great if God's will was consistent with my will. But if it wasn't, oh well. Took me a long time and a lot of hard knocks to recognize that there's no separation and that God's will is so much greater than mine could ever be, and that I didn't have to continue to do things the hard way and the wrong way just to do them my way. That I could release, I could let go, and I could do it God's way, because that's the only way. That's the only way that I get any kind of satisfaction in my life. That's the only way my life has ever been really easy, is when I just take my hands off. And so that's what I invite you to do. I invite you to take your hands off and trust. And that's where the visioning comes in. We talked last week about visioning for our own lives, and some of you went through the exercise with us. How many people did the visioning during the week? Yeah. How many people got things coming up during the week? Because what visioning is it's a meditative process. It's a deep meditative process that we go into and open ourselves up to catch God's vision for whatever it is we're visioning for. We may be visioning, we were talking last week about visioning for our lives. That's what we're going to be talking about this month when we talk about visioning for our lives, but we can vision for anything, because anything you can think of, any project, any event in your life, or any group or any organization, there's a visioning process that happens because God has an idea already of how it wants to show up as that thing, as that person, as that project, as that marriage, as that relationship, as your body, as your health, as whatever it is. And so visioning is a really, really, really powerful and important process that we do. We open up to catch God's vision. Because as I've said over and over again, our only purpose for being here is to be expressions of God's unconditional love. That's our sole purpose for being here on this planet. And we do that by however God wants to show up. We do that as whatever our professions may be, whatever our roles may be, whatever our occupations may be, whatever. That's how we are expressing. God has an idea of how he wants to express perfectly, as you, as me. And that's why it's important for us to really get into the habit of opening ourselves up to catch that vision, because it's just there waiting for us. And so we're going to go through the process again. There are questions that we ask when we go into the meditation process. The first question is, what is God's vision for my life? What is God's highest vision for my life? What is God's vision? That was the question we were asking last week. What is God's vision for my life? How does God see itself as me? How does God see itself as me? You don't have to worry about how you're going to do it, whatever it is, because if God has the vision, God has the way. So all we have to do is be open and just allow it to be revealed to us and through us. And so then the question after the what is God's vision for my life, which is the question we asked last week, the next question that we're going to be dealing with today is, what must I become? What must I become? We are always becoming. We're always becoming. We're always changing. We're always growing. That's what becoming is. If we were not becoming, we would be stagnant. We would be the same. Well, we know some people who may be like that. We'd be stuck in that old stuff. You know, the consciousness that obtains sustains. That's what Ernest Holmes says. The consciousness that obtains sustains. So if whatever got us to where we are is the consciousness that brought us there, and that same consciousness will keep us here. And if we want to experience something greater, our consciousness has to shift. It has to enlarge. It has to expand. It has to grow. We have to be willing to become whatever it is God wants us to become, so that that vision can be made manifest in our lives as our lives. That's what visioning is about. What must I become? What does God want me to become so that this vision can be made manifest? Ernest Holmes says that as we bring ourselves to a greater vision, we induce a greater concept, and therefore we experience more growth, more expansion, and more experiences in our lives, greater experiences in our lives. In this way, we get to experience change and growth and unfoldment. As we bring ourselves to a greater vision, we induce a greater concept. We are bringing ourselves to a greater vision when we are bringing ourselves to God's vision, when we're opening ourselves to God's vision. And we induce a greater concept. We induce the greater concept, which is God's idea of how it wants to show up as you, as me, as each of us, as Creative Living Fellowship. And we've been doing some powerful visioning here at this center since June. And we've been having some powerful results here at this center since June. Yeah. Yeah, how about that? Powerful results that we're having here. Same thing can happen in your life, individually. Same things can happen in our lives or in your, whatever it is you want a vision for. So really, 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 really anchor into this practice of visioning. It really will change your life. It requires you to trust. It's not a short-term process. It takes a little while. And the important thing as we go along is that you don't discount anything, because God's vision is unfolding not only in this sanctuary on Sunday mornings, it's unfolding all the time. God's vision is dynamic. It's always unfolding. It's always unfolding. It's always being revealed to us. So it requires us to be mindful, like driving down the road. Oh, there's somebody crossing the street. Oh, there's another car out of their lane. Oh, there's a light there that I need to stop for, or whatever the case may be. It's always unfolding. So we're always going along knowing that it's dynamic and knowing that we have to be in the moment and be aware. That's how we catch the vision. We catch the vision through our senses, through our sight, through our sound, through the sense of smell, the sense of taste, how we feel. Can you know that word? Thank you. Kinesthetically. Wouldn't come. So being aware of what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're sensing into, what you're smelling, what you're hearing, all of this can be a part of God's vision. Don't discount anything. Be aware of metaphors. Be aware of day signs, things that just happen seemingly out of the clear, and see what the message is there for you. And then keep a little notepad with you and write it down. This is how you keep up with what's happening, and what is God's vision for my life. And watch how our lives begin to unfold. So I'm going to invite you now to get comfortable in your chairs, because we're going to continue with this visioning process. And remember that visioning is different from visualization. In visualization, you already know what you want, and so you're focusing on what you want. Powerful process, and you focus on it and continue to look at it, continue to imagine yourself having it until it comes into manifestation. That's visualization, and that's you focusing on what you want, which is limited. It's powerful, you get what you want, and it's still limited. In visioning, we're open. We don't know. We don't know what we want. We don't know what we're going to get. We're open and we're trusting, and it's limitless. That's the power of that. It's limitless. We can live limitless lives by allowing God's limitless vision to be revealed to and through us and as us. And so let's just take a breath as we just turn within, breathing in, breathing out. Mark's going to give us a little traveling music. Knowing that we're not trying to make anything happen. We're just being. We're just being, simply being. Being open, breathing in, being available, being. And so we breathe in and we breathe out. And so continuing to breathe, taking a deep breath, going even deeper. Going deeper into that place where we know, sense, and feel the presence of God. Knowing that this presence is all around us, within us. It is who we are. It breathes us in this moment. It's closer than hands and feet. We rest in this presence. as we rest here, I ask the question, what is God's vision for my life? How does God see itself as me? What does God's vision look like? How does it sound? What does it feel like? Does it have a smell or a taste? What is God's vision for itself as my life? And now I ask, what must I become so that God's vision may be made manifest in my life, as my life? What must I become? In my becoming, how must I change? Where do I need to grow? Reveal to me, O God, how I must change and grow. So that I may become that which I need to become for your vision to be made manifest as my life. What must I become? The answers may come as thoughts, as sounds, as pictures, or as nothing at all. We take a breath and we remain open. To God's vision of what I must become. So just continuing to breathe. We're just bringing our focus and our attention back into our bodies. Yet we're remaining open and available to it being revealed to us what I must become so that God's vision could be made manifest in my life, as my life. And so we're going to come back into this time and this space, back into your seats. Continuing to breathe normally. Whenever you're ready, just open your eyes. And as with last week, there are blank sheets of paper in the pew pockets in front of you. You may take a few moments and you may want to jot down something that you received, something that you saw, something that you heard or felt. And breathe as you take a few moments to do that, just a few notes. You can write about it later if you want. The question was, what must I become? How must I change? How must I grow? Breathe as you're writing. Notice the question was not, what must I do? It was, what must I be? That's the question. So we're going to bring this exercise to a close for this time, but remain open to what's coming through, because something will be coming through if you're available to it throughout the week. What is God's vision for my life? What must I become so that that vision may be made manifest as my life? And we breathe, and we remain open, and we don't get bent out of shape if we didn't get anything at all. Knowing that God is always right where we are, so it's always revealing whatever to us. And knowing also that our prayer is not for God's vision to be made manifest. Our prayer is to be open to God's vision being revealed to and through us. Our prayer is for the willingness to become whatever it is that we need to become. Our prayer is to be willing to know God's vision. Our prayer is to be willing to engage in the process. Our prayer is to be willing to live full out, to live God's vision in our lives. That's a big thing. And we can all do it because we're doing it. So I invite you to be open and receptive, because that's what it takes. It takes openness and receptivity. It takes availability and surrender, and most of all, trust. It takes trust, trusting God, trusting that God knows better than we do. Thank God. Trusting God. So let's turn within for prayer this morning. As we breathe, just continuing in this consciousness that's been established here this day, just knowing that God is all there is. The only life, the only power, the only presence, the only mind, the only breath. The only is God. This onlyness that is God is my very life. It's the life of each of us here this day. It's the life of us all. It's the source of us all. And by whatever name we choose to call it, it's the same. It's the source of our being. I choose to call it God. You may choose to call it nothing at all. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change that source, that onlyness, that infinite presence that is God. That infinite presence, that only breath that breathes us, that is always guiding us, always directing us, always showing us the way, always going before, making straight our way, in always, in always, in always, and always. And so I speak the word for each of us this morning from this place of awareness, from this place of oneness. I speak a word of wholeness, knowing that as we tune in, becoming God-filled, we are whole. We are perfect. We are complete, just as we are. Nothing missing, nothing lacking. We are whole. We are perfect. We are complete, just as we are. And all the challenges that we may face or the issues that may come up are dissolved by this presence that is right where we are. this healing presence that's right where we are. So we can release the doubt and the fear and the stuff that we hold on to. And we can open ourselves up to that healing presence, knowing that there's healing in our body temples, there's healing in our relationships, there's healing in our bodies of affairs, there's healing everywhere. Even when it doesn't look like it, even when it doesn't feel like it, healing gets messy sometimes. It looks messy. And we know that in the middle of the mess, God is. Whatever that mess may be, God is. And that presence of God is dissolving anything that is unlike it. Anything that is unlike peace and love and harmony and joy and forgiveness and compassion. Anything unlike those things are dissolved. They return to the nothingness from whence they came. And we just open ourselves to the love that is, to the presence that is, to the perfection that already is. How awesome it is to have this experience of oneness. How awesome it is to live a life of oneness. How awesome it is to live a life of wholeness. That's the word that I speak for each of us this day. Each of us lives a life of wholeness. All needs met. All needs met in each and every moment of each and every day. And so as I open this circle of prayer, I pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer. You may speak their names silently or loud, and you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping them. This prayer goes out to anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day, knowing that God is in the midst of every situation and circumstance. Thank you, Father, Mother God. Thank you, Infinite Presence. Thank you, Divine Mother. I just allow it to be now. And so it is.